This is Glenn Pendlay with the Weightlifting Scoop. I have all sorts of random people here today. James is here.
Yep, I'm here.
Travis is here.
Oh, I wouldn't say we're random group of people.
Well, you're not. You're random within my circle of acquaintances. Might even say friends. Don McCauley is here.
Let's not go that far, but I'm here too.
I have a question for Don.
Ooh.
Right.
Everybody, after it died out for a while,
Yes.
everybody's making a big stink again about the word catapult. And what the hell is the deal with that, in your opinion?
People have a lot of hearing and reading comprehension loss, evidently. I don't know how many times I've explained this, but I'll explain it one more time here. There is no particular catapult technique. Catapult is merely a description of what I think lifters do when they lift weights now that the rules have changed, that we touch the body with the weight. I think the human resembles a catapulting motion, and not only on the way up, but then resembles a catapulting motion on the way down, if you understand that a slingshot is a catapult as well. That's all it means. There is no banging off the hip extra. There is no flat-footed catapult. There is none of that. People just don't read very well.
Okay, well, I read well.
You do.
I guess I'm not a normal people, but to me, the biggest thing that when you say catapult pull, that's different from when you say jump and shrug, is just less time spent at the top. You get the hips in the bar, and you get into the bar and catch it, and ignore the upward pulling motion with the arms, and which is a part of a lot of people's teaching of the Olympic lifts. So it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal for me, but it sure does seem to upset a lot of people. And that might be just because it's you that said it.
It could be.
You are a very controversial person, Don.
I am. It might be that I'm not the most diplomatic person.
Well, you're not.
Yeah, well, evidently that's part of it. That's what I think. I think catapult is exactly what you say. When I think of the lifting motion, I think of accelerating the bar and then getting under. I don't think of anything else having a great deal to do with moving the bar upwards. There's no shrug up. There's no jump up. There's getting under the bar after you accelerate it.
James, what do you think when you hear the word catapult?
Besides the fact that I'm in trouble again.
Yeah, well, if I hear it in person, that's a different thing. If it's on the internet, I think, oh boy, it's about to get crazy.
If it's on the internet, you immediately want to start a fight with somebody.
Well, actually, it's more like when it's on the internet, it's like I immediately am in the front row seat of watching a fight. So that's always kind of entertaining.
He grabs the popcorn, literally. He cooked some popcorn and read through some forums today. He went on the Catalyst Athletics page and was literally eating popcorn while reading all those comments.
Well, it was funny that I learned something when I was watching the videos that were up on, I guess, the Catalyst Athletics forum that they posted of you at Athletes Arena in 2009. Mm-hmm. Was that I was actually there.
Yeah.
Didn't even know it.
No, we got there, and I've talked about this before. I wasn't supposed to speak that day. Steve Powell was supposed to speak, and about 10 minutes before he was supposed to speak, he was not feeling well and asked me to step in. And I had brought two lifters there, and I just gave kind of an offhand 20-minute thing. And I think I wouldn't be overly surprised if I didn't watch my words really closely. I have been known not to watch words really closely, but the reaction to it was, let's say, way overboard, and nobody ever called me to ask me, Don, did you mean this? What did you say? And da-da-da-da-da. No, they just jumped on it. And I tend to feel that there's a lot of people that, especially over the last few years, have started to back away from techniques that they used to use and are trying to make believe that it never happened. I've been around too long for that, really. So, in any case, it was a quick speech. I said some things about flat-footed, then it got called a flat-footed catapult. It's not a flat-footed lift, but you can lift flat-footed, as we know.
Well, I mean, what catapult means is that something is, like, basically loaded. So, like, the first pull is kind of like your loading phase. Would you agree with that?
Sure.
And
The first
then
pull,
as the bar reaches the hips, the extension, that's like your, that's like letting go of the catapult.
that's
if
right.
you
I
will.
mean, I use catapult in place of jump and shrug.
So
That's
so
what
when
it
those
looks like
hips
to me.
come through, that's like the catapult going off and throwing the implement.
Exactly.
Which is what your hips do. Your hips come into the bar, you extend up, it throws the implement over your head. So, like, if people think logically about what catapult means, loading phase, throwing phase, like, he didn't mean that it was a flat-footed movement. And they tried to say catapult means flat-footed, but what it really means is that you're loading and then throwing the bar over your head.
Yeah.
So,
And basically, we know in weightlifting that you maintain contact with the bar and you're always working with it. And so the other phase is after you've catapulted it into the air and you're still holding on to it, the next thing you do is catapult yourself under the bar. That's all. That's all there is to it.
and I'll have to say people have changed the way that they're teaching, maybe not particular people, but over time, I mean, I think the U.S. definitely has adapted, because when I first started lifting, it was common to see people brush low on the snatch and pull with their arms, and that's kind of like the technique that I developed early on in weightlifting, and I realized it was wrong at a certain point, but it took a while to fix. And so point being, I know that people used to teach that, so maybe some people don't teach that anymore. A lot of people don't teach that anymore. But I think a lot of the ideas and how they've adapted it, like, come from your original thoughts on the subject.
Well, I think that there was a lot. There's been a lot that I've seen, and I haven't been in weightlifting as long as Dawn has, but there's a lot that I've seen. You see posters with people doing the whole shrug, upright row motion. You see illustrations in books. You see it described. I think everyone's backing away from that now, because there's sometimes, a dichotomy between what's happening and what's talked about exists for a while, just because it has existed for a while, and there's momentum, there's inertia there. And sometimes somebody has to step away and say something really, really different that's really controversial to get people to kind of re-examine it. And I think that's happened, and now people want to deny that ever was the case, because it's obviously wrong. I think that you can teach it that way and have some people catch on just fine and do just great. But it's not technically correct. It's not a good technical explanation of the lift. But it seems to have divided everybody into two camps. And I haven't, spoken to, both verbally and through emails, people that would consider themselves diehard, triple extension, whatever. That's the way they describe lifting. They can look at the same lift as Don does and say, yeah, that's just right. So it's like a difference in terminology, and I don't describe the lifts in terms of triple extension, and neither do you, Don, because there's obviously a hierarchy of importance there. The ankle extension is not a major force production part of the lifts.
Yeah, and not only that, but in the middle, in weightlifting, sometimes after the start of what we could call the triple extension sequence, there's going back. You reflex the knees. At the readjustment, you reflex the knees. That doesn't happen in triple extension in any other sport. Once you start triple extension, you complete triple extension. It's not necessarily so, and not everybody does it to the same amount. If you're teaching a guy to tackle in football and you want him to go through somebody, he's not going to measure how much his plantar flexion is. Whereas if you look at two lifters here, you look at Travis and you look at James, both of them have different amounts of flexion, plantar flexion in their lift at different times. So that's different. That's just simply different.
Well, too, I mean, most people who go into triple extension, so if you're going to tackle somebody, you're extending the hips and you're going. But in weightlifting, your hips rise off the floor and then they come back under the bar before you go into your finish. And that's an important part of lifting, that double knee bend, getting the hips under the bar before you extend the hips.
Yeah, and plus our goal is not to just drive in one direction. Our goal is to come back and pull ourselves under the bar. So there has to be some moderation in what we do on the way up.
Yeah, the difference between weightlifting and the extension in weightlifting and, say, shot put even, is in weightlifting you move the implement and then you catch it. And that switching from throwing to catching, or moving it upward or outward or wherever, and then going back to catch it, makes it a different proposition. Makes weightlifting a different sport than some other things that require many of the same physical qualities.
Yeah, we're exactly right, Glenn. I mean, I coached throwing, and they're different. I certainly emphasize triple extension in throwing.
Yeah, they are different. Just look at Tom Shrug.
Exactly.
Tom still uses that excuse that he was a thrower, why he moves his foot around a little bit when he catches a clean or something. And he says, I was a thrower. No, Tom.
When is he ever going to stop that, James?
I don't know. Somebody needs to teach him a lesson. He's got to learn, you know.
He's got to learn at some point. I agree with that.
Talking shit, though.
Yeah, we should title this episode and just call Tom out, even though it really has nothing too much to do with calling Tom out, but we should just make it seem like that.
Well, James, when I asked you why you were here, you said it was to fuck shit up. Right from the start.
Well,
he looks like a troublemaker. So. He looks like one.
Hey, fuck the team up or something. Talk shit on Tom. Now Tom's not going to talk to me or James. It's going to get weird in there. Jeez.
Yeah. No, me and Tom are best friends. I could say whatever I want to him, and he'll still talk to me. I don't know about you, but
probably not.
Definitely doesn't go for me. But
not you. No, God, no.
No, the other day. This is another sidetrack, so we'll get back on topic. But the other day, James is talking shit to Tom. He's like, how much you gonna snatch today, Tom? And Tom's like, 1 more kilo than you. James is like, there's no freaking way. Like, it's just not gonna happen. And then I was like, I looked at the board and we actually, had percentages on the board. And I was like, Tom, your 80% is higher than James, so you're gonna snatch more than him. That's all you have to say. So then Tom goes, hey, James, Travis said his 80% is higher than yours, so he's gonna outsnatch both of us. like starting shit, like making James pissed off at me. I'm like, oh, okay.
This is how misunderstandings happen.
It's the game of
This
Tom.
is what happens to me all the time.
I just think, getting back to the triple extension, the catapult. The catapult, I've never heard. I've talked to Don about this a fair amount. And just because we've talked over the phone and, verbally quite a bit, and I never heard Don say you have to stay flat-footed. I think I would be representing him correctly if I said that he's of a mindset that you should stay flat-footed more than some people do, or you should stay relatively flat-footed until late in the lift, some things like that. But that's not really that controversial. I myself believe it's better to keep your heels on the ground till late in the lift. It's just not that controversial, but by blowing up the whole catapult thing, blowing it up to be something that it really is not, you can create quite a bit of stir, and that's certainly been done.
Yeah, I mean, that's really basically all I've ever said, and I don't believe, one of the things I don't believe about getting up on the balls of the feet is that you shouldn't leave the set position with that idea as part of your thought process about what you're trying to do. What you're trying to do is move the bar and accelerate the bar and then beat it down to the floor so you can catch. So you're there first. That's all you're trying to do.
So is there some things that we can agree on? Like, it's kind of hard because we all in this room are of the same thought process and the snatch. But, I mean, what are the things that are, like, common throughout that we can draw?
I know something. I think we can all agree on this. What you want to do in the pull, no matter what pull you're using, and like some people are using what they call the Chinese pull now, which is more of a 4-foot pull. And you do get up on the balls of the feet quite a bit. But they're doing a different thing. They're trying to go backwards and all this stuff. I think we can all agree that you want to keep the bar over the base.
Yeah, we definitely agree on that.
And you want to accelerate it, and you want to stay ahead of it. You want to be going, essentially, after acceleration as quickly as possible in a different direction than the bar is.
Could I say that most everyone would agree that the bar shouldn't go forward off the ground? Would that be accurate?
I think so.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
So, Glenn, you teach, so, I mean, you don't really like say that you're teaching the catapult or the triple extension or jump and shrug at your seminars. You just teach positions 1, 2, and 3. And then the fourth major position is the catch position. So, can we all agree, I think, if we put some diagrams out there of some people snatching, that everyone gets to position 1, 2, and 3 and the catch position at least. And the movement between those positions is what causes controversy.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's accurate. Yeah.
I think, did you remember that that diagram that I think it was Jacob Sipkin put up on Facebook that had a hand-drawn, stick picture of somebody in the start position. And then it had another one to the left of it, or to the right of it, I can't remember, of somebody in the catch position, and it said, in between some magic happens and then you're here.
Yeah.
I think we could all agree on that. Something happens and you catch the bar and there you go.
But I think now, I think most weightlifting coaches are teaching the same start position now, which wasn't necessarily true 8 years ago.
That's very true. The start
But I think people are starting.
Changed.
So the shoulders are even with the bar now instead of being in front of the bar. So I think people are at least on the same page as far as general starting position.
I think the hips are further down in general than they used to be.
Yeah.
And you're right, the shoulders are more or less vertically over the bar for almost everybody now.
And then the shoulders come in front of the bar at the knee. And then the bar comes into the hips. But that readjustment, I mean, in triple extension weightlifting, the readjustment phase, the scoop phase, which is why it's called the weightlifting scoop, because that's the most important part of the lift.
That's pretty clever, Travis. Travis came up with that.
Had to throw that out there.
I hadn't gotten that.
But that scoop phase of the lift is the most important part of the lift that wasn't really taught when everyone was teaching triple extension or jump and shrug, or at least I wasn't taught that. I didn't understand that. And when I started thinking about that, it really changed my lifting. So,
well, it's funny. I mean, I'm old enough to come from the time when you couldn't touch the bar to your body.
Yeah.
And that was the rule.
That's pretty damn old.
That is friggin' old. So, then I think the pull could have more accurately been called a jump and shrug.
Well, because you wouldn't want to readjust.
When I first took up weightlifting, I took it up. I was in my 20s already. We called it the single pull. That's what we called it. And when that stuff came over from Russia, and of course you never got to see this stuff. You heard about it.
There was no internet.
There was no internet.
So unless you traveled to the World Championships.
Right. And they didn't want to tell us. They weren't really offering to tell us anything. We then called that the double pull. And we knew something happened in the middle, but I didn't hear a good explanation of that myself until almost the 90s. And that was the 70s then. And I mean, it really just wasn't a whole lot of information around. And I think an awful lot of guys kind of took it on themselves to kind of invent whatever was in the middle. And they may not have had solid information on that.
Well, even if you look at the Olympics in the 80s, when people were starting to change over to modern technique, you could see that like lower brush and longer pull at the arms. And so like you can see the development of weightlifting like that, what you see in the 80s Olympics. What's that video called? It's like does anybody know the name of that YouTube video where it's something about the 1980 Olympics?
Are you talking about the one that has the guy with the really big hair?
Yeah.
Singlet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. It has 8 million lifters all failing.
Hey, Glenn, there's a silence option on your phone. He gets called 10 times every
figured
year.
We don't
that
like
out.
that song.
It's a good song.
It's a good song.
I mean, you don't even have Ain't No Mountain High Enough on that anymore.
That's before it came on.
Tom doesn't hack your phone anymore, which is, I guess, a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Or have you just figured out how to change it back once
Well,
he does?
I did eventually figure out how to change it back.
Eventually was 3 months, but
You're being generous with 3 months.
It took me a while, but I got it.
You notice how they turned on you quick?
Every time someone
always
would
do.
call Glenn, the Ain't No Mountain High Enough song would come on. He'd be like, damn it, Tom! Every time. It's just, doesn't matter where Tom is. So I actually got drawn into one of those discussions about the flat-footed lifter. My picture came up on the internet doing a snatch. And me having my nature of just wanting to fuck shit up, according to Glenn, they put a picture of me up on my toes at the finish of a snatch with like 140 at nationals. And then the comment was, oh, he's supposed to be a flat-footed puller. And I really just wanted to post and say, everyone makes mistakes. But, as just to stir up stuff, but I refrained from...
Yeah, the thing about that, too, is still pictures are the worst thing in the world to say what anybody's doing with, because James is a pretty flat-footed puller as they go. He certainly stays flat-footed a long time. He gets up on the balls of his feet when he's starting to move his feet.
Yeah, well,
and that's not the second pull. You know, the second pull is over.
On snatches, I tend to get up on my toes a little bit more.
A little bit more, yeah.
Yeah, on cleans, I kind of stay flat-footed a little longer.
So I found this video. It's called Weightlifting Failure and Success Moscow 1980 Olympics. So if you look at the first lifters on that video, you can see they're brushing mid-thigh, they're pulling with their arms, and they're jumping and shrugging, right? It was just the standard technique in the 80s. And this was present in USA weightlifting up until 2004. So when the bar leaves the body early, you have to pull with your arms a lot, and you have to continue to pull a little longer, and you feel the weight in your arms' possession longer, and that's where a lot of this controversy came from. So people have adapted now.
The pull changed.
Yeah,
I mean the pull changed. The pull changed. One of the reasons the pull changed is the athletes changed. The athletes when they dropped the press. Which is what, 64, 68, I think? 72?
72.
72? You know better than me. They dropped the press. You no longer did all the heavy training, up in the body. You started to get a more gymnastic type of athlete, and frankly, the pull changed. And then the Bulgarians really made the pull change, because they were throwing themselves all over the damn place. And that was an influence. And then other people started to do different things. And the bar crept up the leg, quite a bit.
Yeah, so people started to figure out if you bring the bar into the hips, and we were late developing on that. 'Cause even a lot of our good lifters up until a certain point, like I probably didn't totally, feel the bar, like make correct contact into my hips until like late 2010. So.
Yeah, you changed dramatically. I remember what was the year when you came out to Cal Strength when I was coaching out there?
2011.
You were still doing your heaviest snatches from the upper thigh.
Yeah, it was really hard for me. Like I knew at that point that how you were supposed to snatch, but at that point I didn't really have a coach telling me, you need to do this, and I was training from meet to meet. So I could only do it correctly with like 100 kilos. So I never really fully changed it till I moved to Cal Strength. And then that's when I started making progress in the snatch. I think people like James have an advantage because they're in the sport later where that is not controversial anymore. Like that's not something that's taught wrong anymore at all.
Well, it's amazing the influence that the internet has had, both verbally. Travis just took my phone from me. Both the verbal communication back and forth, it's much easier and quicker, and then also just the videos is, something's not hidden anymore. I mean, you can easily say, wait a minute, that was wrong or not, and direct feedback, and also evidence, just plain evidence of seeing a video and not just having it described to you or something like that. You can easily see how the best lifters are lifting. Certainly you can get what used to take 20 years done in a month or two.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, I mean, it's totally ridiculous. And it doesn't even have to, I mean, it obviously affects the coaches, but who it really affects are the lifters. The lifters, no matter what the coach might be saying, if the lifters go to the internet and they see 25 guys doing it this way, and that's not quite what their coach, well, they're going to imitate the 25 guys. And you've got actually something to imitate now, whereas back in the 70s, 80s, and into the 90s, really, you did not have that.
You only had the best lifters in your gym to imitate, which may or may not be doing it correctly. So
that is true.
Yeah,
especially if you train by yourself, and if you train with no coach and things like that. I mean, yeah, it's obviously much better today.
So, would you say at least most coaches are on somewhat of the same page, and the argument is kind of semantics at this point, or?
I think the argument has become much ado about nothing. I said as much on that thread that was going crazy the other night. I think from what I've seen, the lifting has changed dramatically in general over the last few years. In the 90s and in the 80s, it was also dramatically different to the bad side. And I think, we were, in this country, even good lifters in many cases were too tall and too far forward most of the time. They may have been doing great lifts. Some of them were doing great lifts.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those situations where I believe they could have done more. Had they been a little further back over the base.
Well, you know who had pretty modern technique, who happens to be probably the best weightlifter, or at least definitely best female, is Cheryl. She had very Asian-looking technique and tempo.
Yeah, Cheryl almost, and she never got told about sweeping the bar or anything. I was in the gym when she was training almost all the time before 2000, and they did not teach that. They taught and said to her every day, pull it straight off the floor. Cheryl never pulled it straight off the floor, and she didn't know that she swept, but it was her natural way of pulling. The bar came in right away.
Was she ever taught, like, the readjustment? Because she had a really exaggerated readjustment, and if you look at her tempo, like, she was way ahead of what people were teaching at that time.
Yeah, no, she was never taught that.
So that was just natural.
That was a natural thing. We've had several lifters that are like that. Years ago, you can look back at a lifter who was a great lifter, Mark Cameron, in the 70s, and you'll see technique that's similar.
Yeah.
And nobody was teaching that then.
Mark Cameron, the lightest guy to ever clean and jerk 500 pounds in the U.S.
Yes.
in the
and
110 weight class.
One of the tests, I saw Mark when he was younger and lighter, and was as fast as anything I ever saw or have seen since. And his technique was different than everybody else's, and nobody knew exactly what it was, but it was different, and he was dead fast.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I heard that Mark actually teaches, like, to bring the bar into the hips, extend the hips, and nothing happens between, like Glenn and you do. And I found that interesting because he did lift when people were teaching otherwise. So
yeah, I think, well, his biggest coaching influence was a guy named Joe Mills, who was, I would say, a savant. He just knew how people should move.
Yeah, you know, I actually, at the last seminar, I had a lot of success. So the biggest critique in the way that we teach at seminars is that people end up pushing their hips forward, right? So the biggest thing that, you know, the stand up, jump down, that's from Joe Mills, correct?
Yes.
And, so I've been using that as a way, like, you extend the hips just like you're standing up, but you're standing up as forcefully as you possibly can, and then you're jumping down underneath the weight, and that really helps people extend the hips upward and then get under the bar straight as well. But what can we do to keep people from pushing the hips forward?
Well, I mean, I tell them all the time, you know, if they do it, if I see it, I correct it. I say, don't get like a banana. It's just like standing up. I say your position with the hips is just the same position. It's extended when you're standing, period. But if I don't see it, it's much more difficult because it's a hard thing to correct. You've got to keep pushing with the legs to get vertical extension, and the hips just have to flick really at the bar. They don't stay out there, and they don't go any further than they have to because they're the hip extension muscles are extremely strong.
So the bar's in your lap, you're standing up as hard as you can, and then you get right back underneath that bar.
Yeah.
What about you, Glenn? I mean,
I don't know. You know, I've used the stand-up jump down before. Wouldn't say that I say it constantly at every seminar or anything like that. I also have used, retreat the hips before. But I don't see that overextension like constantly at seminars. And so it's more of a thing that if somebody's doing it, I'll try to correct it, but it's not something that I feel like, is a constant error. I think the fact that don't let them, sit around and power snatch or power clean forever. As soon as they get the bar, you can get the bar on their shoulders in a good position or get the bar overhead in a good position. We go to, full squat snatches or squat cleans. And I think that prevents that from developing.
Well, because one thing Don said is, well, if I see him every lift, and that's what the other side of the camp will say too, is that I think the Bergner warm-up gets confused by a lot of people, and they really think pull with the arms because you're high pulling, and without retreating the hips, and then you're doing muscle snatches. So you're never retreating the hips, so you're thinking pulling up, turn the bar over with your rotator cuffs almost. So, but I think if you're in the gym with Mike, he's obviously going to teach you to get under the bar. But when people teach these things, so I think that our biggest critique on that side is that it's teaching people to pull with the arms from what we see. And their critique to us is that people are pushing the hips forward and focusing on banging the bar with the hips or like bringing the hips into the bar. So I think it would just be beneficial from both sides to kind of hear, what we can do maybe to meet in the middle and like avoid both of those major flaws.
I think one of the biggest things is to not power snatch for months before you learn to snatch. Just
that's one opinion.
Yeah. Go into the damn bar.
Shit's about to get real.
That will solve a lot of stuff.
Now, let's talk a little more about that. Glenn and I know he's one of the guys that likes to get people doing the squats right away. I kind of let people find their way down to the squat a little more than he does. But one of the things, and James knows this, and Travis knows this too, one of the things I do in clinics is I do a hellacious amount of drills, and things like dirty dancing and rock and roll. And those drills, because they're so quick and only really involve the hips, avoid you being able to hyperextend your hips. You don't have the time, and you're learning that the hips just sort of touch standing and then get the hell out of there again. So I do a lot of that work in the drills.
Okay. Yeah. So I do most of the seminars with Glenn, and I think the one thing that we express is when you do a full snatch, you get that negative feedback. So if you miss it, you did it wrong. And whereas with a power snatch, you might not miss it if it's not perfect, right? You don't get as much negative feedback because there's more leeway. You can pull with your arms a little longer, get away with it. Those particular things that we're really trying to avoid. So I think that's kind of the stance where Glenn's coming from.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad stance. I think one of the things I don't particularly like is that the power snatch and the power cleans are seen as totally different lifts by a lot of people. I just consider them high catches of snatches and cleans. I don't vary technique because of them. And if I see somebody doing that, they get corrected quickly.
Well, let's say if you learn to snatch and clean well, then your power snatches and power cleans are going to be cut high.
Yeah, exactly.
But if you spend a lot of time on power, especially when you're uncoached, you come up with things you're doing that wouldn't allow you to do a proper snatch.
Yeah, especially uncoached. I agree with that. Or if you're on a college football team and have a regular strength coach, because I don't know what they're doing. I really don't know what that is.
Yeah, accidentally end up split cleaning.
Yeah.
Well, the funniest thing is when I was in high school, I had a buddy who was a little better on the clean than me, and he kind of like split his back foot back a little bit because we do power cleans. And so for about 3 months, I thought that was the cool thing to do. I was like, all the strongest kids push their back foot back a little bit. That's kind of like an example that without YouTube weightlifting, you trust what the strongest kid in the gym is doing. I was maybe in 9th grade. This kid was at 12th grade. So he's like, he's obviously a lot more mature than me. So he's going to be a little stronger if he's like, good at weightlifting. So, kind of a funny story.
Just a little stronger. We watched a video today of a 13 or 14-year-old kid who just back squatted 400 pounds. And
the kid was 13. His coach just emailed me.
13, yeah. And then Travis was like, man, It just wasn't the cool thing to do to video yourself lifting when I was young. I did that. So, I mean, Travis was a pretty strong 13-year-old kid.
Well, I was told he was 14. If he did it when he was 13, then he might be better than me. But
yeah, but there's no squatting in Olympic lifting. So who cares?
Well, that kid also snatched 90 and clean and jerked 120, so he's not bad for a 13-year-old. I think we can all say that.
I couldn't do that. I was really just kidding around with James. I was like 400 pounds at 14. Screw that. I did that. You know, like, I was just messing around and didn't really want that on the podcast, but it made its way in here.
Yeah, I'm really working on offending people today. If you can't tell, but
you are.
Yeah, I know. I'm doing a pretty good job. I'm taking it's a competition between me and Don, and I'm winning.
No, you've taken the heat off me.
Oh, yeah, I'm if it's a competition.
College strength coaches are right now all mad at me.
Well,
but that's another
speaking of college strength coaches, when I was in college, I took a, I don't know, some class. I majored in exercise science. So, of course, we had the NSCA textbook and all that. And, I had this one kid taking a class with me, and Don just stood up and had his arms bent on his toes real high. This kid had to teach everybody in the class how to snatch. He had never seen a snatch. I don't know why the professor or whatever he was decided to let the students teach these exercises, and these kids had no idea about anything, especially snatch. So he comes in there and he's teaching us how to snatch, and all he did was read the textbook. He didn't YouTube it or anything. It was terrible. I mean, it kind of looked like a golf swing mixed with a high pull, mixed with a curl, and then a press, and that was a snatch. And I don't know how he got all those things out of that textbook, but that's what happened when he read the textbook.
That's a sign of the apocalypse, I believe. I think that
yeah.
particular motion.
Yeah, those pictures.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, well, and
I think from now forward, I mean, honestly, even though most people won't admit it, the whole catapult thing is pretty much over. I mean, the idea of getting the bar in your hips, you know, extending and going under and catching it, people are doing that now. You know, not everybody's doing it perfect, obviously. Yeah. I mean, but people are doing that now to a much higher extent than they were in 2004, 2005. But I think the biggest thing is people continually take this, and they're probably going off what they read on the internet, and they're going off of what some people are saying. But people are really now entrenching themselves. Like, I'm a triple extension person, or coaches. I'm a catapult coach, and it's like, no, you know, wrong idea. You know, you haven't gotten the idea yet, and that's what's going to keep this ridiculous thing going far longer than it should.
Well, one of my favorite things is, I just find this funny because when did you first really start doing seminars? I mean, just in the past year, you started doing a few seminars.
Any amount. I mean, I wrote the book I wrote was back in 10, I think. 9,
well,
10.
Well, a lot of people.
And the seminars came at least a good year after that.
Yeah, a lot of people were saying, like, you just coined this term so you could sell seminars, but really, I mean, you were doing a negligible amount of seminars until recently.
Yeah, the term came out of a debate on the Go Heavy forum between Matt Foreman, I think Chris LaRue, and maybe one other person and me, and all it really was an offhand remark I made because we were talking jumping and shrugging and all that other stuff, and I said something like, and probably there's somebody that has, I bet Butch Curry has the text. I said something like, no, I think the lift is more of a catapulting motion than a jumping motion, except that we catch the bar instead of just throw it. I think that's about what I said. I mean, that was.
Well, your one of your posts is linked in that article, but then the rest of the post disappeared. Either they deleted them or I don't know. Go Heavy's
They
kind of
tend
small.
to like to take parts of my posts and put them on.
I wish that whole thread was still there, though. I mean, it would be interesting to see.
I'll bet $1 that Butch Curry has it in a drawer somewhere. He has everything, so you know.
That I don't know how confident that makes you seem. Is $1 a lot of money?
More than $1.
More than $1? Yeah, well, God, I just got this new job.
Would you be willing to put $20 down on that?
I'll put $20 on it, by God.
Yeah, I think Butch Curry is the Where's Waldo of weightlifting videos, by the way. I swear I see him in all these random videos just sitting there in the back watching.
I remember once being at Butch Curry's apartment and him showing me a handful of my posts from Go Heavy. You know, like I didn't have any. I didn't know where the hell that came from, you know.
Well, you should contact him, see if we can get a copy of that. It'd be interesting.
Believe me, it wasn't. Well, they were very mad at me for saying that. I remember that in the little debate that we debate's a nice word.
I think what everyone wants to know is what did Chris LaRue say in this debate?
Yeah, I'd pay more than $20 for that.
I think I'm going to pass on that. I think I'm going to go. I think I'm going to not really talk about that.
That's probably good. Probably good. I'm actually really proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you. I've matured over the last couple of years.
I took the spotlight, so.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we got to get to training, so you guys got anything else quickly? We got about 5 minutes.
I bring nothing to the table.
Nah, I think I agree with Glenn. Last word is I agree with Glenn. I think this is over. I thought it was over a while ago. I think some people are making a big thing about it. I wonder what their motives are. I don't know.
I got something. We're about to go train. You think I can clean 182 kilos today?
No.
Will you put money on that?
I'll put $1 on it.
$1. All right. So if I think I already owe some people some money for bets that I lost, but if I clean 182 today, you owe me $1, an American dollar. None of that Venezuelan or Guatemalan.
A good, honest American dollar, James.
All right.
I would have gone for the Venezuelan.
I almost maybe a coin dollar too.
Ooh.
I don't have a coin dollar.
But if I
Susan B. Anthony, what the hell do you want?
I don't know. If I clean 182,
make them anymore?
If it has to be a coin dollar, can it be some other country?
A franc.
If you got something from Poland.
Okay.
Because I don't have any Polish money. I didn't bring any back.
Okay, I brought some back, so I'll some kind of Polish money.
That sounds good. So I'm going to clean 182 today.
So once again, the stakes are high here at Muscle Driver.
Jeez, I wasn't even going to clean that much. Now he's going to make me try. Dude, I mean, I have to say,
if you don't clean more than James cleans, I'm going to give James $1.
James has obviously had this in his mind because as he had his hand on the table, his thumbnail is like 3 inches long. So he's ready to go.
On this piece
I may want to take back my bet.
Well, I will say that my thumbnail on my left hand did crack the other day. I was very disappointed, but I don't think that'll hold me back.
Well, I hope not.
All right. Well, anyways, tweet us at WLiftingScoop. Send us your questions to the weightliftingscoop@gmail.com. Check out our Max Out Friday. Hopefully we'll have a video up soon, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.